how does that even happen? Somebody like me, this grandma in her house, in her office, writing a song, and a nun in a convent in Poland, hearing it and feeling the spirit from it, and then sending it back to me. I mean, there's hundreds of stories like that.
Shawna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
When I first started the podcast, I wanted to bring on powerful women with unique stories about how they followed God and where that led them. You were the first person that came to mind, and I'm so excited to share your story today.
Well, it's good to be here, and I'm excited to tell it.
So maybe just share a little bit of your background.
I am a mom and a grandma. I am married to my best friend. We have 5 children and going on 19 grandchildren.
Amazing.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So fun. Thank you. And I grew up, music was a big thing in my family. We kind of all chose between music and sports. That was kind of a hard choice for me. But I ended up doing music. I was a pianist. And I spent a lot of time behind the piano.
Okay.
So that's where I learned my first stuff about music. I had a great choir teacher at Orem High School.
We share love for Orem High School.
Yes, we do. Yes.
My mom went there, her siblings, my grandma taught there.
Yeah, it was a great place, great education. I loved it. And anyway, I learned a lot from him, and then I went on to major in music in college.
Okay. And you went to Brigham Young University.
Yes.
In Utah.
Yes.
And did you finish that degree?
No,
Okay.
I didn't. I actually have a really interesting story about how I even got into the music program.
Sure. Please do.
All right. I spent so much time behind the piano that I really wanted to do something different. And I decided that I wanted to be a Cougarette. And that felt like the pinnacle of success to me. I mean, right? And so I tried out and I got in, and I was still in high school. So I worked out with them all summer long before my freshman year. And I loved it in a way, but I could not shake the feeling that I had every single time I went into the gym. You don't belong here. And I mean, that feeling just kept coming. I kept working out with them. And I finally thought, okay, I need to figure out why I'm feeling this way. And I was wandering around campus one day, and I went into the Harris Fine Arts Center and sat in the back of a music class. And I knew that's where I was supposed to be. And I couldn't do both. I couldn't do Cougarettes and music. Music is a hard degree. And so I quit Cougarettes, and I got into the music program. And I became a piano major. And when I tell this story, I knew that I was where I was supposed to be. But man, the reality of it was brutal, because I traded possibly dancing in Cougar Stadium in front of 60,000 fans to practicing 4 hours a day in the basement of the Harris Fine Arts Center in front of nobody. And there were days and days when I thought, what was I thinking? And yet that was where I was led, and I kept going. And then I didn't graduate at that time because I met John, and we were married, and we moved away, and we started a family. And I was just a full-time mom for the next 20 years.
There are so many beautiful pieces to that. And I feel like a lot of women that I know that have done beautiful things for God, there's typically a time in their life where they have to set it aside for a minute. And it typically feels like forever. Like, well, I don't think I'll ever come back. And it typically feels lonely. And I don't know why he does that. I'm going to ask him, what is it about these periods of loneliness and honing our skills and practicing for nobody? But I usually see it, and then it comes back.
Yes.
Later on. And it's the coolest thing, but it feels so hard. And maybe it's a little bit like Joseph in Egypt. You're down and sitting there in the prison for decades. Is this it? Not that motherhood's a prison. That's not what I mean. I was thinking the basement of the Harris Fine Arts Center by yourself practicing the piano, but
like a dungeon.
Like a dungeon.
Yeah.
And then you went all in full time on mothering. Was that ever tricky for you? Did you ever think back and say, wow, I wonder if I could have done something with music? Or once you turned the corner, you were all in?
No, I just wanted to be a full-time mom. And my husband his career took him out of town a ton. And I figured, he's gone. I should not be gone. And so I loved, my kids were so fun, so great. We had 4 boys and a girl. And the teenage years were my favorite by far. I loved those years. And really the only music that I did on a regular basis was I led the children's group in our congregation, which is called Primary. And I probably did that on and off for about 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, I loved it. I just teaching them the gospel of Jesus Christ through song. And when you learn a song when you're that age, you never forget it.
Which, as an aside, one of the projects we got to work on together, which really you did the bulk of the work and God gave me an idea, was putting the living Christ to music.
Yeah.
And just today, I got a text from my sister who had a video of her 2 little boys. This was a few years ago, but she had just found the video and she didn't know I was even interviewing you today and sent me the video. And one of her little boys is in like footy pajamas. Like he was probably 2, I'd have to say. He can hardly form the words, and yet he's singing this powerful document of who Jesus Christ is and what he does for us. And it's powerful what music can do for a little child to learn these words that then are with them for a lifetime.
Yeah, it's so awesome. And I mean, God gave us music. That's why it's so powerful. But speaking of the living Christ, that really was one of my hardest projects, maybe the hardest.
I'm sorry.
No, I learned so much doing it. But, there's no rhyming. There's no meter to the words. It's just a bunch of words. And I had to figure out how to put them into a piece of music that would make musical sense. And it was rough. But, we got there.
It was amazing. It was kind of miraculous how the whole thing happened, how it came together. And now to have this piece of music that I can't remember how many thousands of hits we get on our website of people finding it still and memorizing it still. Yeah. And every year our family brushes up on it the 8 weeks leading up to Easter every year.
Oh,
and it just makes me so happy. And all my kids have it. And so thank you for that legacy of love that you've left, which I will link. It'll be fun for other people to find it who haven't yet. So there, you were all in on motherhood. You taught some children's choirs within your own congregation, which is so fun, on a free part-time basis, as we do in our church. We get asked to do it and we help out. What did you love the teenage years? Maybe any tips for young moms or for teen moms of how I think about the difference of my years of mothering and yours? There was no social media. There was no looking at how and what everybody else was doing. Do you think that impacted you and how you mothered and that experience for you?
No, it was so much. I think it was so much easier.
Why?
Well, we know what social media can do, the negative impact it can have. We didn't have that, not until the very, very, very end when our youngest kids were teenagers. And there was just more time to be present, with each other. Because the biggest distraction was TV and, there were video games, but that was pretty much it, We spent a lot of time at the ballpark and at the gym. We spent a lot of time watching ball games. And I wouldn't trade those minutes or those games for anything in the whole wide world. I wanted to be there with the kids.
My most joyful and impactful mothering moments is when I've totally put the phone away somewhere else.
Yeah.
And the more present I am, the more I love being a mom.
Absolutely.
And I think, man, we really have to be so careful.
Yeah.
Have to be so careful. And I can say that with lived experience. Literally, Instagram came out about the year I had my oldest daughter. And to see the times and seasons when I've been very active online and not active at all online, and how much I've had to battle, just like, am I doing it right? And are we having fun as a family? And instead of just having fun, and just doing it the best way I can and letting God be the person I turn to say, how am I doing in my parenting? And how should Christmas look? And I kind of long for the days when moms didn't have to battle that, though it comes with so many other benefits and beautiful things, but
absolutely,
you have to be thoughtful about how you invite that time into your life and what you're doing with it.
Right. And you mentioned the benefits of the internet and social media. I mean, a person like me 15 years ago could not have had a stage. I wouldn't have had a way to get my music out, but now there's a way. It's YouTube, that's my stage. And it's been quite the journey to put stuff on YouTube. And
as an aside, and then I want to jump into where your career took you after motherhood. I've thought about this a lot with the advent of social media and of YouTube and all of these channels. I think it impacts the ability of women to impact the world more than anything ever has.
Absolutely.
Because there was no option to be a mom and be with your kids and do anything else.
Right.
It's transformed that. Now it comes with the danger of distracting.
Right.
I mean, it's fire, and it can ruin our families because we're always looking out or thinking, I have to start a business right now. Or if I have a business, it has to be super successful. So I'm going to spend all my time because I'm still at home. But on the flip side, it enables us, same with me with this podcast, to have a voice and do things in the time that I have available when my kids are at school in these short windows. And then thankfully I have this awesome team who then edits it and clips it down. So I'm not taking my time doing that. But I can do that only because of this, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's turn from here to the transition between all in, loving motherhood, just find that you had left music behind. What brought you back to it?
This is a weird thing. I was just on a hike one day with my sister, and she said, I was 45. She said, oh, my friend so-and-so went back to school. And, I told you about how that feeling came that was so strong. This is where you belong. That feeling came again, and it was, you should go back to school. And it was strong enough. And I don't have those very often. Most of the time you're wondering, what does the Lord really want me to do? But in that moment, I was like, I'm going back to school. And I went home and said, hey, what to John, what do you think? And he said, do it. He was super supportive of that. So I went back, and this is where I found out. So we're 25 years later. This is where I found out why the early decision to quit Cougarettes and go into music. Because when I went back, they let me back into the music program, which never would have, if I was new into the music program and had to audition, I wouldn't have made it. I wasn't practiced at that point. And so they let me back in because they had already invested in me, right? And they wanted me to be able to finish. And I said, I'm not practicing the piano for 4 hours a day. There's no point in my doing that. So what can I major in that's different from that and doesn't require that? And somebody mentioned media music, which is writing and producing music that, everybody listens to. And I said, okay. And my first class in that major was songwriting. And I loved it. I loved it. And I think I took it a couple of other times. I took it 3 times before I graduated.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of those little pieces of your life. With our human minds, we could never write a story that good.
No.
Like God is this master writer where he just says, you don't get it yet. This is chapter 1. That's going to lead back into chapter 8.
Right. And when I was in school in the beginning, there was no YouTube, no social media. There was no internet. I didn't even know, I couldn't have even imagined what the internet was at that time. But God knew. And one of the things that he also put into my life that prepared me was I started making videos of our kids' sports teams, like the video they show at, the banquet at the end of the year. So I learned how to work with a camera a little bit and how to edit video. And when I first started, I did all my own videos. And so that was a piece of the puzzle that was important for me to have as well.
Oh, that's so great. And it's the small and simple things. Like there's a scripture that says like the ways of the Lord look small to the understanding of men. Mm-hmm. And you would think it was the opposite. Like if we saw something God was doing, it'd be like, oh my goodness, this is this huge thing. But it's usually like oh, I'm just making videos for my family.
Right.
And you're going to use that later?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I thought that already had a purpose in and of itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
So great. Were there any other things like that you looked back on and thought, well, wow, that sure prepared me well, or this is easier than it should be coming in at this point?
I would say John, my husband, he was so supportive. And at the beginning, he funded everything because I wasn't selling any music. I was literally just giving it away, you know. And also, he's a good musician. And so he's really good to be able to say, you know, what about this? When I play him the first version of a song, he makes almost every single song better. So, you know, he's been a great partner in this whole thing.
How fun. You always light up when you talk about him. That's really sweet.
He's awesome.
So during BYU years, you take songwriting 3 times. Did you start writing music then, or were you kind of exploring what you wanted to do with it?
Oh, I started then. I didn't put anything out. I just wrote really for assignments for my class.
Okay.
Yeah. The very first assignment we had was the professor, Ron Simpson, who was so great. He told a story in class and he said, now go home and write a song about that story. And I had been a classically trained pianist, and so I was all about the notes. So literally I went home and I wrote this song and we had to sing it in class. And then he gave live feedback. So it was intimidating, you know. But I wrote out every single note of that song, even the accompaniment, and I taped a bunch of papers together. And when I went to perform it in class, I put it out on the piano like this, you know, and I played it and sang it. And when I was done, he said, don't ever do that again. I'm like, oh, what? He said, you have got to become chord-based and you cannot have a bunch of music like that. So nobody will take you seriously. And so that was my very first foray into songwriting right there.
Oh, man.
Anyway.
Was that deflating or were you like kind of just rolled with it?
Well, it was deflating. But what it was, okay, I need to take on a whole new challenge. I need to figure out how to do this with just lyrics and a chord sheet. And that took me a while.
When did you put out your first song?
Not till after I graduated. And it was Do You Have Room? It's a Christmas song that I wrote for my family a few years earlier.
Okay.
And I wrote it for them. And all of my first songs were just for a person or a little group of people. The Miracle was just for my children's choir. And so I put Do You Have Room out, and interesting story in its own. And probably I had used video that I thought I had permission for, but I didn't have the right permission. And it went viral.
Your first song?
My first song went viral. But on December 18th, it had been out for 3 weeks. And I got a notice from the owner of the video that I had, violated their copyright and to take it down immediately.
Oh.
Which was devastating, because all these churches were going to use it on like their midnight mass for Christmas Eve. And it disappeared. And then I put up another one that wasn't nearly as beautiful because I didn't have the video with it, it just had pictures and it just wasn't the same. But the other thing that happened at about the same time was it was used in this big public performance it was performed at the old Tabernacle up on Temple Square. And there were all these people and they had invited my friends and family as part of the audience, a couple thousand people. And it was the first live performance of one of my own songs. And I was super excited for it. And I do not know, Lizzy, if the kid who sang it was a last minute stand-in, but the song was unrecognizable.
Really?
Yeah. He didn't get the melody right or the words or the rhythm. I mean, I was devastated with the video, but I was actually more devastated about that. And I went home and said to John, I am never putting my music out again. Why would I do that? This is just the worst. And I didn't for a while.
How did you get over that, and how long did it take?
So when I originally put out Do You Have Room, my dad loved that song, and he was there on Christmas Eve when I sang it for my family. And he kept saying to me when I would see him, have you done anything with that song? And I didn't know what to do with it, And then he passed away after I graduated, and I kept hearing his voice say to me, have you done anything with that song? And so I had already had the Do You Have Room experience, but I kept hearing that. And I just kept thinking, I'm supposed to be writing music and putting it out there. So I just it took maybe a couple of years. A couple of years later, I put The Miracle up.
A couple of years after you had put the Do You Have Room song and it was taken down?
Yeah.
Did you have another song in between that time?
I did have, I think, one, and it's called Everything Speaks His Name. So just one, and then one the next year, and then The Miracle, which I wrote in a car on the way to Chicago. And I came home and sang it to John. And Do You Have Room? YouTube was young then. And Do You Have Room had maybe 500,000 views, which was a good amount of views.
Which was
at the
insane
time.
for a first video. Insane.
Well, it was that second video and it,
insane.
It was okay.
Actually, that is crazy.
All right.
Yes.
And anyway, it was
lots of songwriters would love any of their videos to be that big, let alone their first.
Okay.
Yes.
So I went on a walk with John on a Sunday morning, and he said, sing that song to me that you wrote on the way to Chicago. Because I was with our son, Gary. I drove out with him. And I sang it to him, and he said, this is going to have more views and be more popular than Do You Have Room? And I said, no way. And he said, way. I just remember that conversation. And it has been. I mean, it's probably my most well-known song, for sure.
Mm. You were at our congregation when all of the children of our whole state sung that song.
Yeah.
I tried to say hi. You were walking around. I was like, Shawna, my kids were in the choir too.
Oh,
that was so powerful.
Great. It was wonderful.
It was powerful. I don't know how many kids were up there, but hundreds.
Ton, yeah.
It was huge.
It was
huge
so
choir.
Beautiful.
And I love that song. I know I'm not the only one, obviously, with as well as it's done. So you waited a few years in between. Then after you wrote The Miracle, was that like the moment when you thought, okay, I'm just going to go all in and do this? Or were there still moments after that you're like, I don't know, I'm not a songwriter, or I don't produce there. I'm not a YouTuber.
There were lots of moments like that still. And many, many times when I thought, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm still doing this. I still had some setbacks, but, and I think at first there were no expectations. Nobody knew me, and like I said, I was just writing songs for the people in my life. And when I wrote The Miracle for my children's little group called Primary, I thought, this is for them. I'm not, it's not going to go anywhere else. And then after my mom died, I wrote More Than Enough, which kind of also took off a little bit because it just spoke to moms. And then I think one of the hardest things, Lizzy, was when I got to the point where people had expectations. Mm. And then I thought, oh, a lot of people will hear this song because now I have an audience. And is it good enough? Or is this the song where they will find out that I'm really a fraud and I don't know what I'm doing?
Oh, I'm laughing just because it's so funny how that works. It's so crazy, and how the imposter syndrome can kick in at different points.
Yeah. You
and I have had a conversation recently, and I want to talk about this for just a minute.
Okay.
And then I want to talk more about the success. I mean, we already can see where the road is heading if you had 500,000 views on your first song, and like it's been unbelievably impactful, your music and the lyrics and just your faith in your heart and the humility of it all can be felt through these songs. And that has resonated worldwide, which is just really incredible. So we're going to come back to that. But we had an interesting conversation yesterday that I think highlights a bigger principle that I don't think either of us thought we were going to talk about on this podcast. But I think I want to talk about because I know that this will resonate with so many women, because I've never met a woman. There's not one woman I know who's doing something for God that doesn't have opposition. Yeah. And one thing I've realized recently is it doesn't matter what the opposition is. Satan's happy to get you however he can get you. If it's to distract you, if it's to stop you, if it's to discourage you, if it's to get you proud so you think you're better than the work. I mean, he just doesn't really care. The point is he doesn't want you to do that thing that you are called to do, that you've been prepared to do, that God's been writing in your story for longer than you probably have any idea. We talked a little bit about imposter syndrome, which I think we all face always. Again, I think it's one of those tools Satan can use and he loves to use. At some point, we finally realize we get over that. I'm not an imposter because I've done this long enough. This is what I do, right? Yeah. But I think he'll use that tool as long as he can use it. Can we share the conversation from yesterday that we had?
Yes. So I called because I really wanted to cancel.
I knew it.
I mean,
I could tell after about
honest.
The end of the conversation. I didn't know that until the very end of the conversation.
And I had already had a conversation with John, and he said, "Oh, no, don't cancel. That's the wrong thing to do." But I didn't want to come on because I don't feel like I look good. A couple of years ago, I had papillary thyroid cancer, and I had to have my thyroid out. And I have not responded well to not having a thyroid, and I've gained a bunch of weight, and I hate that. And another byproduct of that we didn't talk about yesterday is that I have lost my voice. I can't sing anymore.
Oh, wow.
Which is tragic.
Yeah.
For me. And so anyway, I thought I can't be on Lizzy's podcast because it's a video and I don't look good. And I'm going to postpone it until I lose some weight. But man, I've been trying. And it hasn't been happening. I've been trying for 2 years to lose weight and I'm not being successful. And this conversation that we had, and also the conversation with John, the basic thing that came out of that was Satan is using that to stop you from doing the good that you could do. And you're letting him win this battle by caving. And another thing is that as Christian women, we talk all the time about doing the most important things and having our heart set on the most important things. And the way I look is not the most important thing. It's not about how I look. It's not about me. It's not really even about my music. It's about Jesus and his gospel. And so after I talked to you and John, I thought, okay, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to be on it. So here I am.
Thank you for your bravery. Not just because you're here. And I know this is a conversation women need to have and to hear about your music and how God works over a lifetime with a woman. But we needed to have this conversation too. And again, I mean, I told you this on the phone and I'm going to share it here. I actually haven't talked about this on the podcast and I'm at this point kind of an open book, and maybe that's why I was ready to start podcasting. If there's something that's happened to me that I can share that can be helpful, I'm happy to. But I shared this with you yesterday. It has been the number one thing that Satan's used with me too. Mm-hmm. And it's like, since I was in high school, you don't want to go to that party because you don't look like how you should look. And you don't want to go show up on that thing and say no to that or cancel last minute. And it's so interesting because until you know that it's him, until you know that that's a tactic, it seems real.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's a pretty convincing one. Like It's true. I really can't reach people, or they wouldn't want to hear what I have to say, or they don't want me showing up on their doorstep because look at me.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, like, supermodels can feel this way. It has nothing actually to do about the weight or beauty or anything. And we know that the women in our lives that touch us deeply, it's never about how they've looked.
No.
That's not the thing that touches us.
Yeah.
But my fear is that he's sold this lie so many times that so many women aren't speaking, and we're not seeing all the things that we should see in body types and age. I look too old, or I'm too wrinkly to get on camera, or
for sure.
whatever it is.
Yep.
And so then we start only seeing one type, and social media is really good. They actually, this is an aside, but documents from TikTok, they promote more beautiful people.
Oh,
so
really?
It's actually reinforced what we're seeing.
For sure.
Is this beauty, not just because people watch longer. They proactively have made a decision to show more beauty.
Interesting.
So then we think, well, most people are beautiful, and most people have a body that looks like this, and most people are this tall, and most people can handle wearing heels all the time or whatever. When it's like, that's just not the case. That's a very small subsection of people. But then if we hold our light back, that'll just be the thing that's reinforced to the next generation, as that's the norm. And those are the only people we want to hear from. And that's what matters most.
That is so true. I love that. That is so powerful. And like I said, when we buy into that, we are letting Satan win that argument. And we cannot do that. And so I had to break the ice and get to the point where I felt like, okay, I can get out there and I'm not going to worry about what I look like. And this is that time I'm doing that. And then
today is the
I'm going
day
to do more. Yep. Today's the day.
I've told you this before, and we talked a little bit about it yesterday as well. You are very articulate. You can actually see through those lies really clearly. Every time we talk, you have like a clairvoyance about you, about what's true and what's happening. And if it were just about your music, I don't think Satan would care if you didn't get on camera and talk. I think there's another level of what you're going to continue to do in sharing how faith communities are coming together and what your music is doing. And even being like a voice to women that doesn't matter how old you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you've done in your past. Trust your training, trust your story, and let God work through you for that. What are some of those projects that you're seeing now that maybe this shift is going to change? Is there anything in your life that you're like, wow, if I'm not afraid to get on camera, what's coming?
I mean, so many things. I have talked endlessly with my assistant about doing more on social media, about telling stories, about telling about the miracles that have happened. And there are so many. About faith and how we all bring these very inadequate offerings, like Peter, who brought 5 loaves and 2 fishes to feed thousands and thousands of people. And he said, but what are these among so many? And we bring these very inadequate offerings. But that's all the Lord needs to make a miracle. And I feel like he can make a miracle out of every single good thing we do. And so I'm going to be out there more.
Those of you who are listening, not watching, I'm doing silent clapping because I don't want to cut you off. I'm so excited because your voice is so needed.
Well, you've been telling me for a long time.
I have been.
Yeah.
Back when I asked you to do that really hard project.
Yes. Yeah.
I have, because it's just not the conversation I have with everyone. We'll get on the phone for 5 minutes, and we haven't even talked on the phone very many times. Mm-hmm. And every time I'm like, oh, that was such a good nugget. Oh my goodness, what you said right there was so powerful. Oh, I wish everyone could hear that. And like, I'm so excited for you to share that with so many more women. It's needed.
Well, you've been one of the people that's encouraged me. So thank you for doing that.
Yes. And think about how your voice will encourage other women in your same stage to say like, oh, wait, I'm in my 60s too.
Right.
It's not too late. I have something to share.
Right.
And if you're listening and you're in that demographic and you're feeling the pull right now, go do something about it. What would you say to them, Shawna?
Well, God gives everybody gifts. He gives everybody a talent. Mine is music. And it took me a long time to get to the point where I would even like say that, because that felt like I was bragging. God gave me a talent. And that's not what I mean. I mean, he just gives you something that you can use to do and make the world a better place. And everybody has their loaves and fishes that they can bring. And I would just say, if you feel compelled, I was 50 when I put my first song on YouTube. And if you feel compelled to do something and you feel like you are being led and you can do something to help people, just go do it. You don't have to have a big audience. You don't have to do it for a lot of people. Just do it for one person. And then keep doing it. And don't let those setbacks stop you. Stop stopping,
Yes.
because Satan will try to get to you as soon as he realizes, oh, this could have a good impact on people. He'll do anything he can to get to you. Don't let him do that.
I think the momentum is so powerful that keep that momentum going in the small and simple things. And also don't burn yourself out. There's like a sweet spot right in the middle that when we haven't acted in a while, those first few actions feel so hard. This coming on the podcast and showing your beautiful, wonderful face, it feels so hard. And then you're in the momentum. And then there's another side where it's like, ooh, everybody's expecting something.
Right.
It has to be bigger and better. Like my 5 fish fed 5,000. And so do I need to always have 5 fish with me? No, trust that just the same as you had what you needed then.
Right.
And Jesus was the one who made it enough.
Right.
It's like you almost just feel like that you're in this flow. I'm not really caring how it's going to be perceived. What happens? I'm just going to put it out there over and over. Stop stopping. Keep moving.
Yes. And I literally think, I know, Lizzy, that my songs aren't perfect. I know the flaws in them. And I don't always have months to develop a song, right? So sometimes I will get to where I think the song is about as good as I can do with the time I've had. And I will literally think of putting it in a basket and giving it to the Lord and just saying, here it is. This is what I can do. And trusting that he can make it great. He can spread it. He can share it. And that doesn't always happen. Not all my songs go worldwide and not all of them are seen by millions of people. But the songs, my best songs have been, And I, he says, with faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. It's not us that moves the mountains. We have the faith. Faith precedes the miracle. He moves the mountains. And I have learned to trust that over and over and over and over.
I'm going to use that visual for the rest of my life, that this is the time that I have. This is what I can give. I only have an hour right now before I have to go speak or whatever it is you've asked me to do. And then put it in a basket and say, you decide how many people need to be fed.
Right.
I don't care. I can't care because it's not, if I start caring, then it is about me.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. And young moms who are hearing this as well, that's so powerful that I have this much time with my child, or I have this much time to pick up my house before company's coming, or whatever it is that feels like so stressful, and to say, this is all I've got. And after this, I'm going out to face the world and say, here I am.
Yeah.
Here's my family. Here's my gift. Here's it. And then just trusting. And I think there's some joy that we lose when we can see the imperfections and always apologize for it.
Yes.
But there was a part I was going to fix, or I didn't prepare as long as I wanted on that talk, instead of just saying, if God gave you something, if you were fed from it, then God is good. It worked.
That's right. That's right. And if one person, I believe in song miracles. I believe people create songs with a certain message, and God carries that song to a certain person at the right moment. Because I've had so many people tell me those stories about my own music. And those miracles I didn't do. I just had the faith to put the song out there. And then he took it to the right person at the right time. And if it's just a few people, that's fine. That's enough.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we probably will never know the ripples of anything we do for generations.
I believe
it's impossible.
I believe that. Boyd K. Packer said, nothing good is ever lost. And in my opinion, that means you do something good and it reverberates forever and ever throughout the universe.
Like a beautiful, perfect chord.
Yeah.
That just keeps singing. Ooh. Okay. So tell us where your journey's been post the miracle and what's happened since.
I still was kind of slow, writing just a couple songs a year I put out. And then about 5 years ago, I thought I can do more.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
5 years ago. And so then now I release anywhere from 7 to 10, maybe songs a year.
Okay.
And I don't usually have a plan. I just have, I have an idea about a song.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have that idea, I start writing and working on it, and it gets out there. I have about 70 songs on YouTube and a collective about 60 million views.
Mm.
This story is a good summation of where I've gotten to. We just filmed a Christmas song. It's for children on Saturday.
Okay.
And we wanted to film it in a barn, and it's called More About Jesus. And it's about making Christmas more about Jesus. And so we had this idea of having this big Christmas scene and then ending up with, kind of a manger scene.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, everything went wrong. The barn that we were going to have, I just decided at the very last minute to go up to the town where it was with my producer, and we went up there and it was completely wrong. This was 2 days before the shoot. It was totally wrong. And I just happened to know a lady in the same town that has a barn, and I called her and said, "Hey, can we use your barn?" And she said, "No."
For sure, I thought you were going to say yes. No? Okay.
No. She said, "No, my barn isn't suitable, but there's a lady a street over from me that has a barn that she lets people use sometimes." And I thought, Friday night and Saturday, there's no way, it'll already be booked. And it wasn't. And then we wanted a stable. And with the new barn, we couldn't get the stable through the door. And then our set dresser, her truck broke down, and we didn't have the stuff for the set that we thought we would have. And my producer was going, like, he's a new guy that I've just kind of used a couple of times, and he was like, "Oh, this is all falling apart." And I just kept saying, "It'll be fine. It'll work out." Because I've done enough of these to know that, the Lord sends you on an errand. He doesn't say go alone and do it. He goes with you. And in the end, it was better. The barn was better. Not having a stable was better. Our simple decorations were better. And so it worked out. I'm excited to release it.
So beautiful. I can't wait to hear it. It's released for this Christmas.
Yes, hoping the 30th of November.
Okay.
Yeah, just after Thanksgiving.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Any other stories you can share with us of the impact of your music, or things that have maybe a story that's been especially touching to you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, because that is the most important part of this to me. There are a lot of stories that I could share. I think some of the ones that are most impactful. I did a fireside once, and this was just a couple of years ago. And there was a man on the front row who told this story to the entire group. He said he was a father. He's a father of several children. They moved here from out of the country. He hadn't been able to find good work. He was so discouraged, and he decided that he would end it all. And he told that he got in his car, and I do not know if he chose the miracle to come up or if the miracle was just the next thing on his playlist, but it played in his car. He said he drove around and he played that song over and over and over and over until he didn't feel that way anymore, until he didn't want to end it all. And he went home to his family. I have a cousin who has a severely autistic son who has never sung a word. And every year in our church, the primary does this program that when they sing songs and talk and present their, what they want to about what they've learned that year. And he said in the primary program, from the time that kid was 3 until he was 11, which is your last year, he had stood in the primary program and never sung a word. Well, when he got to be 11, they learned the miracle, and the miracle was going to be the closing song. And he still stood there and didn't open his mouth. But just as the miracle got towards the end, he began to move towards the microphone. And his dad was like, what is he going to do? And they had assigned a little girl in the primary to sing the very last phrase, the miracle that rescues you and me, by herself. And just before she sang it, he stepped to the mic in front of her and he sang those words. And it's the first time anybody had heard him sing. And my cousin said they apologized up and down to her and her parents. And they were like, no, this was a miracle. I mean, the entire congregation was touched
I'm sure.
by that. Music has just such a power. I came out of Hobby Lobby one day and there was a woman there that I had gone to high school with. And she said, I just want to thank you for this song. It's called Coming Home. Her husband had been arrested and taken to prison just recently, in the recent past. And she said, I found this song and I have listened to it over and over and over and over. And it has given me hope. And those are the song miracles, that I talked about earlier. There's a nun in a convent in Poland who sings a lot of my songs. She finds a song that she likes. She Facebooks me. Can I have this one? I send it to her. And then the night before I got my thyroid out, she sent me a video of her singing a song that I had recently sent and playing her guitar. And she said, I just wanted you to know I'm praying for you. And I'm like, how does that even happen? Somebody like me, this grandma in her house, in her office, writing a song, and a nun in a convent in Poland, hearing it and feeling the spirit from it, and then sending it back to me. I mean, there's hundreds of stories like that. And it's been a privilege to be part of those.
Thank you so much for sharing those. I feel like we live at a really incredible time of the world's history. And obviously we already talked about social media and we talked about the internet and like what is available to women right now because of that, which comes with heavy responsibilities to not lose the most beautiful part of life, which I believe is motherhood. I find my greatest joy in my 5 children.
I agree.
But that we have a way open to us to have that joy there and connect with this worldwide family of gods at this time. I know we share the same faith. We're both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in our faith right now, our leader, President Russell M. Nelson, is talking a lot about the miracles that are going to be happening and will be happening to prepare the world for Jesus Christ's second coming. And one thing that has been heavy, but not in a negative way, on my heart is what can we do to work in an interfaith way? We've had so much division among God's church for lots of reasons. And I think it's another one of those, Satan doesn't care how it happens. He's happy. It doesn't matter if he stops it. And I'm so eager and excited and interested to see how this church comes together, God's church. And I have a prayer on my heart that has been audible many times with God that I want to be a part of that happening. And I've asked the questions, how can that happen? How can we be bolder, or what can we say to unite some of these faiths to feel like we are one and not divided? And it's beautiful for me to hear these experiences from you to say, we can all do the thing that we feel called to do and the way we feel called to do it, not worrying about the time frame, if it's coming fast enough or if it feels like it's going too slow, to know that God he knows all of that and he's very aware of that. Any advice you would give to our friends listening on finding their thing or trusting or taking courage to do that thing that's ahead of them?
One thing I would say to everybody, and I say this when I give firesides and presentations, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I waited until a song was perfect, I wouldn't have one song out there. And when we're trying to give of ourselves, we think, oh, well, I'm going to go visit this person who just had a sad thing happen in their life, but I can't go unless I take this perfectly baked loaf of bread with me, right? Homemade bread. And I think of a friend I had named Karen, and this was many years ago. We lived in the same area, and a woman in our area lost her baby. Her baby died. And Karen wanted to go immediately and take something to this woman. And it was her birthday. And she had a half-eaten birthday cake there. And she took the half-eaten birthday cake. And it wasn't about the cake. It was about Karen reaching out and saying, oh my goodness, I love you. What can we do for you? I'm so sorry this happened. If we wait until things are perfect, we're never going to do anything. So just do something small and do it imperfectly and love it. My husband quotes from a business book that says, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Because it can't be perfect. And if you wait until it's perfect, it's not ever going to happen. So I would say be okay with flawed efforts, because Jesus can make those perfect.
That was perfect. Thank you for bringing your whole heart and for the gifts you give to the world, and then turning and showing us that Jesus can do all things with whatever we have to bring. Such a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you.
On behalf of everyone listening who I know feels the same, thank you for showing up and not canceling on me.
It's been great. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.